A proven judicial record for both fairness and for aggressive enforcement of the law to protect our citizens. For nearly 7 years, Ken has been a volunteer judge pro tem. He is a member of numerous organizations, including U.S. Supreme Court, Bar Association, the Federalist Society of San Diego, and the National Rifle Association. Along with his wife, Cynthia. Cynthia's over there?
Somewhere.
Ken is a commercial avocado grower and founder of GenMax Food. The way it's going to run is none of these people are running against one another.
Yippee!
So Ken's going to talk and answer, I guess he gets his own introduction, and then Paul will talk, and then Carl.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be here. I've been here before. I see a lot of faces that I recognize. As you all know, for the last 3/4 of a decade, I've been San Diego County's only full-time Superior Court Judge pro tem, as Dr. Caponte just told you. As a pro tem judge, I've heard thousands of criminal and civil court cases throughout the years. I've been appealed successfully in only 3 known cases. Most of the time I get it right. For the last 3 years, I have served the minor offense division of this San Diego County as a traffic judge. For those of you who recognize me professionally speaking, I hope your experience was a positive one. I'm going to read my response. By the way, the pro bono work, they asked me to make some comment of it. Folks, just so that you know, in all the thousands of cases that I presided over as a judge pro tem in this county, I have done it all as an unpaid judicial volunteer. I am the king of pro bono, okay? We have, my wife Cynthia will pass out my bio and a list of those organizations that I belong to, some 29 civic and ethnic associations throughout the county. I'll let you take a peruse of them. We'll be here all night talking about it. But I'm going to get right into questions. By the way,
That's
you
the
say
1
stop?
minute. That's
Just for
the
the
1
intro.
minute
You get a 1-minute
introduction.
introduction, and then we'll go into the questions. So take your minute and do your introduction.
Just for your timing, Ken.
I'm sorry.
What's that, sir?
Just for your time.
Yeah, okay, but I'm ready to go into the questions. So, by the way, I just got these questions about 2 hours ago. Of course, that's not your problem. This is my mistake. The first one is, who in the currently on the Supreme Court do I most identify with? I think that's an easy one for me. Nino Scalia is the one that I would pick that most closely resembles my style and philosophy. He is a strict constructionist, and he opposes the concept of the Constitution being a living document. Folks, I don't know where that got started, but that's a slippery slope. You start picking holes in a diamond, you're going to depreciate its value, and that's one way to do it. So, Justice Scalia also opposes Roe versus Wade. That's also a personal thing for me. I've spent 6 years as a single parent, physically disabled, autistic infant. Babies are important to me, folks. I know mine is. They are important from the moment they are conceived, and that's my position on it. Death penalty is constitutional, according to Justice Scalia. It'll be constitutional in my courtroom. It's currently constitutional in the state of California. I don't know what we're doing with it as we speak, but I think life is precious, folks, but I can enforce the death penalty. By the way, I got 3 questions. You want me to stop?
Yeah, move on to the next question.
Is that what that means? Okay, so you get the benefit of this. So, how can I advance the limited constitutional role in office? Folks, there's 2 or 3 meanings to that one. I didn't really get it. Well, by the way, I can tell by the nervous laugh behind me. I'm not the only one perhaps that had a problem with that. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to continue practicing constitutional obedience in my courtroom. It's like I've done forever. I've been a judge pro tem, as you know now, in thousands of criminal court cases, from traffic to misdemeanor arraignments. Folks, the Bill of Rights applies to certain aspects of the Bill of Rights apply to those sessions. I'm going to apply them to the letter, no matter what the case is before me. How can I establish justice in my courtroom? Number 1 issue, enforce the law uniformly and with predictability. I think that's the most important things in that regard. There'll be no selective enforcement in my courtroom tomorrow, today, or yesterday. I will not change or make law to achieve a desired outcome, ladies and gentlemen. The scourge of the bench is judicial activism. I think we need to reevaluate how we do our business. We judges apply the written law to the facts of the case, come up with a decision, and stop trying to manipulate the existing law to reach a desired goal. It's time we all started doing that. I know I'm going to get hooked on that one. It's my opportunity to close for you. Again, my bio tells my tales coming at you. If you haven't gotten to it already. I know I'm talking about it fast, but I have another one of these to go to, and from my heart, I apologize for doing it this way. But I want you to know that I'm the only candidate in my race for seat 25 that's been endorsed by the San Diego County Republican Party, the California Republican Assembly, and one of my favorites, the San Diego County Farm Bureau. That's 6,000 men and women throughout the county who grow your food, folks. That's an important endorsement for me. San Diego County Association of Realtors. I'm the only candidate in my race for seat 25 that's been endorsed by Darrell Issa. Folks, that's hard to do. Back in history of his congressional career, he's never endorsed a judicial candidate ever. He broke rank for me. Joel Anderson, Brian Jones, Supervisors Jacob and Roberts, they all endorsed Ken Goslin for seat 25. Deputy Sheriff's Association of San Diego County, PORAC. Peace Officer Research Association of California. Folks, that's 60,000 men and women who wear badges throughout the state of California. They're endorsing Ken Goslin for Superior Court Judge seat 25. I'll take your questions if you have them.
Wait.
What's that? You wait till the end. Okay. I'm going to pass the baton to Judge Miller.
Well, good evening. My name is Paul Ware. I'm running for Superior Court Judge, Office 19. I'm running against an incumbent judge who was appointed in May of 2013. I didn't start my career as a lawyer. All I wanted to be was an infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps when I graduated from USC. God had a different plan for me. He made me a communications officer, but then he assigned me to a tank battalion. 2 months after reporting to my unit, I sat in the sands of Saudi Arabia, and 6 months later, we went through minefields and liberated Kuwait City. After continuing to serve in the Marine Corps as an infantry officer and a squadron commander, I eventually applied for and went to law school. And while in the Marine Corps, I was a prosecutor for 4 years. And then my last 7 years of my 20-year career, I was a military judge. I presided over cases at Camp Pendleton, California, all the way through Arizona, in Iraq during combat, and in the Hawaiian Islands, Guam, Okinawa, and Yokosuka. And I retired in 2009 as a lieutenant colonel, and my time is up. So that's the very quick, rough background of where I come from in my experience as being a judge and as a litigator. First question is, who in the Supreme Court embodies your judicial philosophy? Now, I thought about this long and hard, and there's one Supreme Court justice that embodies, I think, a lot of my philosophies, and there's one I'd like to mention that I admire very much. I admire very much Senator Day O'Connor because she stepped down from the bench when she didn't have to. I think too many of our Supreme Court justices die on the bench, and my own experience with my relatives is when they get in their late 80s, they don't make the same decisions. So I admire the fact that someone would give up that kind of power, like George Washington did, and step down. But she doesn't embody my philosophies, and they'll probably hear the same as Ken Scalia, not because he's a strict constructionist, but because he likes to call himself an originist, meaning that he tries to stay to the origins of the United States Constitution as close as possible. Plus, he writes some very witty commentary in his opinions, and I tend to agree with most of what he has to say. I believe in a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and the expansion and the change of the Constitution should be done through the amendment process by the states. The Constitution should evolve, but it's not living. It evolves through the states ratifying it. It's a slow process because our rights are so important to us. They shouldn't be instantly changed at the whims of the fads of today. Now, the second question, you heard the nervous laughter. I'm not sure what you mean by limited constitutional role in the office. What I can tell you is what my role as a judge is to apply the law as enacted by the legislature, to determine the facts and ensure the rules of evidence are applied in the courtroom fairly to both sides. It's to listen to the parties, whether they're counsel, victims, accused, or parties that are litigating it without a counsel. Is to faithfully try and determine the facts that are an issue and make a decision in accordance with the law, regardless of our own personal perspectives of whether the law is good or bad. See, I fully believe that laws should be changed by the legislature, and I have strong opinions about lots of laws. But I believe those should be changed by my representatives, and I make that voice known when I vote for the people that I think will change our society for the better. Now, how do I apply that to my work experiences? I have the advantage of being a judge and being able to talk about cases in the past that will never come before us now. There is a rule in the military that allows good military character to be a defense to any single offense that there's out there. I think that rule was horrible. I applied it every single day I was in court, both as a prosecutor and as a judge, because it was the law. I never understood why a Marine who acted good on work could be considered innocent of a rape that occurred on the weekend when no one would ever see him on the weekend. But I applied that law because it wasn't my personal opinion whether the law was good or bad. I applied it because that's the law that existed. The last question is, the purpose of the government is the U.S. Constitution. Right in the first sentence, it says to establish justice. I don't believe judges do justice. I believe society does justice. Society determines what's just for us by passing laws. A judge's role is to ensure that the laws that are passed by our society are applied faithfully and fully to both sides in an equal and fair manner. And by that process, justice occurs. See, my role as a judge is to ensure that justice is applied by the laws, not to do justice on my own. Sometimes we have judges that miss that point, and they think that justice is their interpretation of what should happen. I like to give quick analogies, and I'll probably get away with it because I haven't seen my 30 seconds. My son played Little League Baseball, and I've been out to many games where it's been hot and miserable out there. And I say, there's judges out there, just like umpires, that say, you know what, this kid can't throw strikes. We're going to be here forever. I'm going to change the rules and call everything a strike, because that's going to make all the parents happier that we get to move on. Well, I'm the judge that's going to say, no, I'm sorry, parents. It's going to be hot and miserable for you, but those boys expected to play by the rules. And if the kid can't throw strikes, then the manager ought to put someone else in there to throw strikes, because it's unfair to the participants, because they knew the rules going in. And it's not up to me to decide to change the rules, because I think there's a better way to play the game. That's my philosophy when it comes to being in a courtroom, and that's my philosophy in life. And I haven't seen my mark, but I suspect I'm in my closing statements by now. Maybe I've enticed the timekeeper to give me some extra time. I shouldn't have pointed him out that way. If I could have just a few moments just to wrap this up. I started this 2 years ago. When I was in church and my pastor gave a sermon talking about you need to get involved in society and stop complaining about society. He challenged us all. He said, write to your congressman, write to your legislator, don't sit there and complain. And they said, some of you out there have the ability and the talents that God gave you to make a difference and serve your community. And you owe it to your community to step up. I looked at my wife and I laughed and I said, he's talking about me. But I wasn't a politician, I didn't know how to do it. But friends, strangers, and people came to me over the last 6 months after that sermon and encouraged me to step forward and do something. So I've done it. I've stepped out on a limb, I've challenged an incumbent judge who was appointed by the governor, and I've committed my family's resources and plenty of stress to this process. But I'm doing it because I feel in my heart that's where I belong. I'm called to serve this community. God's given me talents, He's given me experiences, and it's time for me to put those experiences, those talents, to serve you as a judge. See, I like to tell people I'm a Marine, I'm a family man, I'm a man of deep faith. And with your vote and your support, after June 3rd, I'll serve you as a judge again.
Good afternoon. My name is Carla Keeney, and like Paul Ware, I am challenging an incumbent judge, and I'm the candidate for San Diego Superior Court seat number 20. Now, I was raised in North County, San Diego, and received a scholarship, ROTC scholarship to Princeton University, and I then went on to UC Hastings Law School and served for 4 years in the United States Army as a JAG officer, and I continued on in the Army National Guard, and I was called to duty during the LA riots. But before I talk to you more about my career, I want to talk to you about what happened last week. Anybody here in the fires? Impacted by the fires? Well, the center of the Carlsbad fires, where my family lives, was right behind my house. And I looked out my window at 11 a.m. or about 10:30 a.m. last Wednesday, and I saw a plume of black smoke and fire. I grabbed my purse, I grabbed my car keys, I grabbed my gun safe, and I drove to my kids' school. I had 3 kids in school there. And we got back, I picked them all up, we got to a safe place, the family was reassembled, and I said, we have each other, we have our freedom, this is the greatest country on earth, and we can rebuild our house. I have 1 more minute. Over the weekend, we saw the firemen, it continued in our neighborhood, putting out hot spots. We thanked them. We gave them popsicles. And
Which is a good idea.
we learned from the firemen what public service is really all about. It's about personal sacrifice for public good. That's why I joined the military. I'm sure that's why Mr. Paul Ware and others out here joined the military, because we knew that our contribution was important to making our community safe, and that's why I've continued on for 18 years as a federal prosecutor. And that is why I'm running for Superior Court Judge. Now on to the questions. Who on the Supreme Court embodies the judicial philosophies you most agree with, and why? Well, I'm going to have to part from my fellow candidates here. And my favorite current Supreme Court judge is Anthony Kennedy. He is a person who stands for individual liberty. He is a justice who looks at each case on its own merits, and he was the vital swing vote in the 2008 decision that struck down the Washington, D.C. limitation on Second Amendment rights and found that to be unconstitutional and upheld personal possession of guns in the District of Columbia. And that was also a decision that personally impacted me, because I had to sell my handgun when I went to work for the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. How can, and on to question number 2, I'm going to speed up here. How can you or will you advance a limited constitutional role in office? I join my other candidates in agreeing that a judge's role is not to make law, but to apply the law as written. I'm running for Superior Court Judge against the incumbent. I'm not running for the state legislature. I'm not running for Congress. And I believe the key role of a judge is to apply it fairly and equally and predictably. That is the essence of being an American, knowing what the law is and knowing how to follow it. If it's constantly being changed from the bench, you don't know how to comply with the law, and neither do the parties, whether they're civil or whether they're in a criminal matter. The third question is, one of the purposes of government, according to the Constitution, or the United States Constitution, is to establish justice. And as a judge in a trial court, such as a Superior Court judge, I believe the job is to, first of all, show respect to the parties and the litigants. Not, the purpose of a judge is to listen, to respect the positions of the parties, whether they're plaintiffs or defendants, whether they're the state in a criminal case or the defendant in a criminal case, because justice is achieved through the vigorous and fair contest in a courtroom. And again, I don't believe my job is to make law or to be an activist judge, but to apply the law as it is provided by the state legislature. And finally, in my 1-minute closing, like Mr. Paul Ware, I'm running against an incumbent judge. My opponent is Judge Lisa Shaw. There's been a lot of press about her. She was about 10 days ago on the front page of the local section. She was called by the lead investigative reporter for the Union Tribune, Greg Moran, as the judge with the most disciplinary actions in the state of California. Out of 1,800 judges, she's the grand prize winner for violations, disciplinary action. She has 3 violations from the Commission on Judicial Performance and a criminal conviction. It's my belief that a judge's role is to uphold the law and to show by example the highest ethical principles of our community and our society. She's been on the bench for 30 years. It's time for some new blood on the bench. I believe that public service is a privilege, not an entitlement. My biggest opponent is apathy. So please, there's been a lot of press about this race. Channel 10 News, lots of newspaper articles. I ask you, Google me and Google my opponent, and you will find the choice is clear, and you will vote for Carla King. The H is silent. I have yard signs, I have lots of pamphlets, and I would be delighted to speak with you after this event. Thank you so much.
Okay. Questions from the bench?
Yes. literally.
Anybody? Any questions?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Where?
Did your house burn down?
So there was a question about whether or not my house burned down. Well, if I can have more than 30 seconds to answer that.
We're in the question and answer.
Yes, okay, well, great. So there were a number of very brave men who stayed behind in my neighborhood against the orders, and it was fairly terrifying. Literally, the fire was across the street. Poinsett, I live very close to Poinsett and Ambrosia, which is the epicenter of the fire. The person who died was across the street from my house. So there were about 5 men who stayed in the neighborhood, and as embers came in from the chaparral and the sagebrush, they hosed down the fences, they hosed down the yards, they put out the fires. Very close friends had a trash can full of leaves that started to burn, and there were bushes, but fortunately, while there were a couple of fences and shrubs and trash cans that burned, none of the houses burned, and the firemen said it was because these men stayed back. Otherwise, the entire neighborhood would have been ignited. I just want to follow up. I left in such a hurry. I left all the windows open. And actually, if you go to my Facebook, we wrote in the ash on my bureau, safe. But it was with great joy and gratitude that we cleaned up the ashes, and we bought from Amazon giant industrial air cleaners so we could breathe in the house. But it really teaches you what's important.
Any more questions? I have a question that, actually it's for all 3 of you.
May I be seated?
Sure. I went to traffic court, and I discovered several things. One, I was told that I had run a stop sign. The judge did not know what a legal stop was. That was interesting. So the judge looked it up in his book. So when you get the question that says there's so many laws you can't know them, that's one of the laws. Now, it turns out that a legal stop is when your tires hit the white line in front of the stop sign. Anybody here ever get out of their car at a stop sign, go look at where their tires are, and then get back in the car? So the officer told the judge that he doesn't actually enforce the law because it's unenforceable. He gives people 3 miles an hour. And I don't know how many feet back from the white line he gives them, but not far enough back so that he could see that I had actually stopped. So when you have a law that is unknown by the judges and unenforced by the law enforcement, how do you let the legislature know, because it's the legislature's responsibility, that this law is unenforceable?
First of all, I'm sorry, Steve. Did you write a ticket? Was it me? Did you write a check for this?
Not sorry at all.
Actually, the answer to your question, and there's many times that's happened to me as a traffic court judge, where there's, particularly in the early days, where there's laws that I wasn't sure of and that sort of thing, or neither was the investigating officer sure about it. But I can tell you this for absolute certainty. You sure you didn't write a check for that? Absolute certainty. We don't spend a lot of time on the phone calling our legislatures. I do 60 trials a day, and I don't have time to go potty sometimes. So that's an unfortunate thing in my view. But there's that happens, by the way, in more times than I care to admit, where we have those dichotomies. Nobody's quite sure of what to do. To fix it would take more time than I have during the course of my day with respect to the legislators. So unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is those things are going to go on in perpetuity until a good doctor or perhaps a legislator gets stopped and does something about it personally.
Well,
Well, I understand your question, but the concern you have is what would judges do? Now, based on the premise of your question, it's unenforceable and you weren't ticketed for that. So as a judge, it won't ever come to your attention. See, there is prosecutorial discretion, there's also law enforcement discretion on what laws they use. If we were to apply every law, some people say we should apply every single law. Well, if we did, we couldn't live. I mean, there are so many regulations out there that there'd be no way to function whatsoever. So, as a judge, if you have a law that's unenforceable or it can't be applied, then you just simply acquit the person, or you dismiss the traffic ticket. And through the process of it being dismissed, I mean, we have red light cameras up in Los Angeles that are universally just dismissed consistently. The legislature will change the law, or you just don't apply it. So if it can't be proved, remember the burden's still on the government to prove that what you did was a violation. So if they charge you for that, that officer's gonna have to testify that he saw that you weren't on the white line. If you can't do that, then the remedy for a court is to dismiss the offense if it's not proved beyond reasonable doubt to be a violation. Whether a law is a good law or a bad law isn't really the role of a judge to determine. It's whether it's applied correctly, if there's evidence to support the violation.
Okay, I promised Ken that I would let him out at 6:30. It is 6:31. Forgive me. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.